I get asked this particular question all the time, so that tells me it's something many of you are interested in, and today you are going to get your answers. Welcome back. I'm Amanda Davidson, your guide to living, eating, sleeping, working, and playing in Northern Virginia. And in today's video, we are talking all things HOAs here in the Northern Virginia housing market. So, what's the deal with all the HOAs in the Northern Virginia housing market? There are far more communities here with an HOA than without, which I know can be unusual to many of you coming from other states. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing what an HOA is, what to expect from an HOA, and what causes their fees to vary. I'm also going to talk about what to expect if you don't live in an HOA. This is also helpful for first-time homebuyers learning about home ownership. So, let's get into all things HOAs. First, what is an HOA? HOA stands for Homeowners Association, and this is everyone who lives within a community, and then those members typically vote in board members. Boards not only consist of a president, vice president, treasurer, it also typically is composed of members who are overseeing an architectural committee and possibly other committees depending on the makeup of the community. This board is in place to uphold the rules that everyone agreed to when they moved into the community. You will also typically find that there is an external property management company that assists the board. They also help with upkeeping the rules that everyone has agreed to, in addition to collecting HOA dues and helping balance and maintain the budget. Okay, let's talk about the rules. The rules are called CC and Rs, and that stands for covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Covenants, as the word implies, you are promising to one party and the other party is promising to you as well. So in the case of an HOA, you are promising when you are moving into that community that you are going to adhere to the community rules. And in return, the HOA is promising to also make everyone else that's living in that community adhere to those rules, in addition to promising to upkeep whatever community amenities there are as well. So this could be maintaining the community pool or sports courts or walking paths or whatever else the community has that they're responsible for. Then you have conditions and rules, which, as they imply, are typically a list of things that you can and cannot do. Some examples of incredibly common rules that people are concerned with when purchasing a home in an HOA is how many pets are they allowed to have, and are there rentals allowed in the community? Those are the two that we get asked the most and something that we are always looking out for when reviewing HOA documents. We also believe in, when we're sitting down having a buyer consultation, it is really important to find out what our clients may have as a deal breaker, because some of these HOAs have some pretty off-the-wall rules. Not all of them, but it is something to keep in mind. For example, there is a neighborhood in Alexandria that says you cannot perform any type of car maintenance in your own driveway. So I'm guessing somewhere along the line, there was a car lover or maybe a mechanic that really ticked everybody off, and they decided that they needed to implement a rule within their HOA that strictly prohibits any car maintenance in the driveway. Kind of random, not one that we come across very often, and don't be that person the HOA has to make a rule for. Many people assume that if there's an HOA, the CC and Rs are extremely strict. And the fact is, here in Northern Virginia, CC and Rs vary drastically from community to community. It really just depends on where you land and what type of property you're buying. Another example here in Northern Virginia is there are plenty of communities with single-family homes that are on large lots, large for Northern Virginia, and they are in an HOA, but they are strictly in place to oversee trash pickup and road maintenance. And we're talking these HOAs are $200-300 annually. They don't cover anything. There's no amenities, there's no rules on what you can or cannot do with your house. You can, paint your front door pink if you'd like. But there is this perception, especially when relocating from another state, that all of these HOAs have these really strict CC and Rs, and that's just not the case. A lot of them have very common rules that are limiting the number of pets you can have, or limiting how long your car can be parked on the street. There's a certain number of days before you have to move it. And of course, a lot of them also have, mentioned earlier, architectural review committees who are going to be overseeing what color you do to paint your door or if you want to change the color of the siding on your house or your roof. But again, it goes back to depending on the community itself. None of them are exactly the same, especially when you're looking at single families on larger lot sizes. They can drastically vary and do not always have strict CC&Rs. I mentioned that because I hear from many of you that when you first reach out that an HOA is an absolute deal breaker for you. But then when you learn a little bit more about them here in Northern Virginia, that isn't always the case. It may be that you need to find one that has less strict CC&Rs and maybe not so much oversight, but that you're okay with an HOA if it's limited in what their rules are. Now let's talk about HOA fees. And another thing I have realized is a lot of you see or hear HOA and think immediately that it's going to be really expensive. And HOA fees vary drastically here in Northern Virginia. It really depends on what's included in that fee, so what the community has to offer. For example, Brambleton in Ashburn. On paper, it looks like the HOA fee is much higher than other areas, but not only does it include a ton of incredible amenities, it also includes cable and internet. So you have to look at what you're getting for the fee that comes with the HOA. Another example is 55 plus communities here. They are loaded with amenities. They're designed to be social communities. And the majority of them also cover yard maintenance. So there is the convenience of that, but of course you're then going to have to pay for it within the HOA. And some of them also include cable and internet. So if they're on the higher side, really take a look at what they're going to include. In comparison, in Alexandria, for example, there are a lot of townhouse communities where the HOA fee is $300, $400 a quarter, and that's because the neighborhoods really don't have amenities. They might have a tot lot or a tennis court and of course common areas, but no pool, fitness center, clubhouse, that type of thing. Something else to keep in mind, you will always see HOA fees higher if the community has a pool because the insurance that is required with a neighborhood pool is very costly. Now let's talk pros and cons of not having an HOA. And the biggest pro is obviously that you can do whatever you want on your property as long as it's within city and county regulations. But the biggest con is that everybody else can do whatever they want on their property as long as it's within city and county regulations. So you kind of have to weigh the pros and cons there, because if you are in a situation where you say, I absolutely do not want an HOA, but then you look around and go, well, I don't like how these properties are being maintained, there is nothing you can do about that unless you're in an HOA. I get calls sometimes from relocation buyers who say, hey, I found this home, I really like the look of it, but I looked at the aerial view and the neighbor has a bunch of junk in the front or the backyard, or their house doesn't look like it's well maintained. What can I do about that? And the fact of the matter is, if you're not in an HOA, as long as that person is adhering to city and county regulations, there's nothing you can do. That is the whole point of not living in an HOA. It is a live and let live atmosphere. And sometimes that can be a surprise when you're moving from another state. It doesn't mean that there's a right or a wrong, but just keep in mind that if you don't have an HOA to oversee your neighbors, you're going to be able to do what you want and they're going to be able to do the same. Another pro of not having an HOA is you eliminate the possibility, it's a slim possibility, that you move into a neighborhood and there's that one neighbor whose life mission is to enforce every single rule the HOA has. If you find yourself in that position, I would recommend getting on the board so that you can help implement some changes. But for the most part, I find that our clients are happy with their HOAs. They don't find them too restrictive or too expensive, and they value all of the amenities and upkeep that the HOA does to maintain the community. The other thing about HOAs that I think is important to consider is your long-term investment. Homes can change over time, so if you are not in an HOA and the only oversight is city and county rules, that could be a detriment to your investment long-term. It may or may not be. It's just something to consider, where when you're in an HOA, yes, you're going to have to follow the rules of that HOA, but so is everyone else. So you are sort of hedging your bets in terms of what the homes around you are going to be in terms of their condition long term. Of course, some people absolutely have to have a community with no HOA. They are running a business out of their home, or they're going to be breeding dogs, or they have a shop that they're going to have on site. Totally understandable, and in those cases, we absolutely can find the right place for you. But keep in mind that even if you are in a situation, say you have an RV that you need to park at home, there are communities with HOAs in Northern Virginia that will allow that. We just have to find the right one. So like most things in real estate, it really comes down to what your personal needs are and then finding the right community to meet those needs. So I hope that helps you understand HOAs here in the Northern Virginia housing market. It is true that they are very common here in Northern Virginia, but both the rules and the fees vary. The most important takeaway from this is to understand them before purchasing a home that is in an HOA. If you're interested in more videos on Northern Virginia and what it's like living here, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We release a new video every single week. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this helpful, and I'll see you on the next one.